when I was 17, my diabetes specialist said to me, I was such a bad diabetic. I was partying hard, as my teenagers do. I wasn't very strict about injecting myself insulin or my eating. And he said to me when I was 17, if you don't get better control, you'll be dead by the time you're 30. And that's really a bad thing to say to a 17-year-old girl, because basically what it said to me was, okay, if I'm going to die when I'm 30, I'm going to party really, really hard. I'm going to cram as much as I can into my life, and I'm going to drop dead at 30.
Okay, life can be crazy. You're feeling like you're sinking, just trying to find a meaning. It's time for better thinking, yeah, better thinking. Time to tune in. Let's go.
Janelle Colquhoun is my guest today on Better Thinking. She's an incredible woman and her story is just absolutely fascinating. Not only is it fascinating because she's completely blind, but it's actually her achievements that just are mind-boggling. There are so many things to rattle off. She's written, papers and research. She's gone out and run productions for people with disabilities. She goes out and is an amazing opera singer, archery accomplishments, travels the world, writing a book. You can't stop this lady, and her attitude is absolutely amazing. And I think there's something for us all to learn from Janelle's story and the way that she approaches life. So enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Better Thinking. Today my guest is Janelle Colquhoun. Extraordinary story, and I couldn't wait to get you on the show today. So welcome, Janelle.
Oh, thanks, Nesh. It's really great to be here.
I was reading through your bio a little while ago, and obviously in preparation for today's conversation. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know where to start. Your life is so full. So I thought maybe it's just most reasonable and responsible of me to allow you to open up and kind of discuss a little bit about yourself, and then we can kind of step into your story, because we've got an hour, but I don't know which part we'll grab, because there's so much to your life. So maybe I'll just hand over the mic to you for a moment.
Oh, great! You give me the difficult job. So, it kind of, my biographies go by which part of my life I'm talking about, because I've been a professional singer. So I started off as an opera singer. And then when I went blind, when I was 29, then I became an entertainment producer and agent, specialising in professional artists with disability. I also travel a heap, including since I went blind. I also have had heaps of health issues, so many so that the last new doctor I saw when I came in to see him, because I was seeing him at the hospital, so he has all my other files from all the other departments. And when I came in, he said, "How on earth are you still alive?" I said, "I'm too stubborn to die. So, you just have to keep on putting up with me." And so tons and tons of health issues. I mean, apart from blindness, which was caused by type 1 diabetes when I was 10. And pretty much tried almost as the diabetes complications, and threw a bit of cancer and organ transplantation into that. And then a couple of years ago, I took up blind archery. So most people don't even know there's such a thing as blind archery. And I always joke that, how do you do blind archery? And I just say, my assistant stands at the target and rings a bell, and I just aim for him. He just ducks as the arrow comes, sort of thing. But of course, it's not quite like that, because that'd be extremely dangerous. Because, I know there was one day I was shooting and my assistant couldn't stop laughing because this plover was on the ground. And as it saw this arrow coming straight towards his head, it ducked, and he couldn't stop laughing because he's seeing this plover duck out of the way of my arrow. Anyway, I haven't skewered any birds yet, hopefully. And yeah, what else do I do? I travel a lot. So just back yesterday from a trip to New Delhi and breathing in the pollution, and then on to Sri Lanka, where I was done heaps, like everyone says, holidays and going holidays. I've done 6 music therapy workshops, 4 performances, a conference paper, and I was team leader both in New Delhi and in Sri Lanka. So in New Delhi, I was a team leader for 4 other blind people, performers, and New Delhi, 2 other blind performers, and a one-sighted member. We finally took a sighted person with us who has autism. So, yeah, trying to keep myself busy. I also write, so I've written the first draft of my novel, and it's just a case of when do I have time to do the second draft. Had publishers and agents and other authors say, as soon as it's ready, let us know. And it's just like, when do I have time to sit down to a second draft? I do too many things. So one of these days, so I'm on heaps and heaps of health committees because I thought I don't want to see anyone going through all the health issues that I have. So anything I can do to help. My self-imposed rule of only 3 health committees at a time has been broken at the moment by being on 6 committees and about 4 subcommittees. So, yeah, I don't get much sleep. It's probably a good thing that I'm on steroids for the immunosuppression, because I think that's the only way I get enough done in my day, by not sleeping much. So, apart from that, I don't do really much, I guess.
So a fairly light schedule, you'd say then?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I got a lot of concerts too. Whenever I can, I go to concerts and plays. I love going out and socialising as well. Yeah, so light schedule.
I tell you what, just this tiny little intro of what you've jam-packed as, in terms of what not only you've done but are doing, currently involved in, put so many of us to kind of, shame. And in actual fact, it is very inspiring. I watched, some of your work, in leading up to this, and that's what really stood out to me. How is it that, you do all of this? What is this, something that's inside you? Do you have to hold a particular attitude? What gives you this outlook?
So it's definitely an attitude, because I know when I went blind, I had all these other people contact me, like parents or friends, who are other people who are going blind, because when I went blind, I didn't have any support. I went blind when I was living in Germany and had to move back to Australia, and I was reaching out for help and there was no one there to help me. And then so, none of the organisations wanted to help me, because diabetes said, well, it's blind, so go to the blindness organisation. Blindness said, well, it's diabetes related, so go to them. And so then obviously, because I just found my own information, and then other people started, then those organisations started putting other people in contact with me, because Janelle's the expert. And then I'm getting people saying, like, you're so positive, you're still so motivated. What do we do to motivate, the person that we know who's gone blind? I said, well, do you know what? I was motivated and driven and stubborn before I went blind. So it hasn't changed. I mean, if anything, I've got a bit worse, maybe, with the motivation and drive and stubbornness. But I don't think it's something you can snap. Something's happened to you. You've had some major accident, something major in your life has changed. Suddenly, snap, I can change personality. I think it was within me. And because I was diabetic since I was 10, when I was 17, my diabetes specialist said to me, I was such a bad diabetic. I was partying hard, as most teenagers do. I wasn't very strict about injecting myself insulin or my eating. And he said to me when I was 17, if you don't get better control, you'll be dead by the time you're 30. And that's really a bad thing to say to a 17-year-old girl, because basically what it said to me was, okay, if I'm going to die when I'm 30, I'm going to party really, really hard. I'm going to cram as much as I can into my life, and I'm going to drop dead at 30. You're 17, you're invincible. Okay, so I'm going to die when I'm 30. Okay, so big deal. I'm just going to do a lot until then. So I just did as much travel as I could. I moved overseas. Same with the Frankfurt Opera. But because what he didn't say was, actually, you're not going to die. Actually, at the age of 29, you'll go blind. And then a few years after that, your kidneys will fail. And so actually, at the age of 29, you're not going to die. You start to suffer. So all the things you were trying to do and wanted to do and were doing, like driving a car in Europe, you won't be able to do anymore. You're going to have to completely learn how to, because I was, a singer, professional opera singer. And so I could read a piece of music twice and I could memorize it by the pictures on the page. And suddenly I had to change to listening to a piece of music and memorizing it. It took me 2 years to retrain my brain on how to memorize. And even still, I remember everything visually. So type up the lyrics for a song that I need to learn, because once it's typed on the screen, it's like I can picture it in my head. In fact, I knew I could do it, but one time I was asked to sing at a funeral, because you get 2 days notice for those, and there was a hymn with about 20 verses, and I kept on thinking, I know I can do this. So I just kept on picturing the computer screen with the words in front of me, and got through the entire thing with correct words. And I went, wow, I can do this. It's just a training of your brain. And so I'm still really visual. So my trip overseas is all, even though I'm only experiencing it, smell, a lot of smell and pollution in New Delhi, of course, and a lot of smell and pollution in Sri Lanka when they were burning off all the plastics in the backyard, getting rid of the rubbish. So you're kind of breathing in this toxic smoke. Thank goodness for environment laws being much better here. And so I just visualize everything. So I remember this conversation as a picture, rather than as just the sounds that are around me and the smells, and that sort of thing. So suddenly I'm gone blind when I'm 29, and then my kidneys fail, and I was adamant I would never have a transplant, because my thought always is, if it's a transplant from a family member, what happens if I get one kidney from them? What happens if their kidney fails? Then they're in the same situation, because I could never do that. And so instead I went into the transplant waiting list, and when I moved to the top of the list 7 years later, then I got stomach cancer, so they took me off the list. And I kind of fought it with alternative methods for 11 months until my kidneys failed totally, and I was going to go on dialysis, but they wouldn't give me dialysis because my stomach cancer was going to kill me anyway. So instead I went on dialysis and had to wait 3 years. Got my stomach removed, which is one really good way of staying thin. If anyone wants a really good way to keep thin, just get your stomach removed. It's all done. And so had my stomach removed, went on dialysis for 3 years, which I still travelled overseas when I was doing dialysis. Then, went back and did what my friends called the interview of my life, because I had to go back to the transplant doctors, the team, and convince them it was worthwhile giving me a transplant, even though there's so few transplants, so many people die waiting for a transplant, that they should, use one of their precious organs on me. And because I was so positive and said I've got so much to do with my life and I want to give back so much by going on health committees, by talking out about organ donation, I dressed up well, put on makeup. My mum commented that I looked the best out of anyone in the waiting room, even though I was by far the sickest in the waiting room, going in for their interviews to see if they go on the transplant list, and convinced them I was a worthy recipient. And 11 years later, my transplant's still going really well. I'm still travelling the world and, getting on more and more health committees. So, like I said, anything I can do to give back so that people aren't going to face the same things as I have, anything I can do to prevent them, getting diabetes, especially obviously type 2 diabetes, because type 1 is, you can't do anything about it, but type 2 is mostly lifestyle, obesity and, poor eating habits and no exercise and that. But anything I can do to prevent other people going through what I did, I'll do. And anything I can do to enjoy my life, which is travel and singing and getting other people work and, speaking, I'm, more than happy to do.
Is there anything that can stop you? Those things that you just rattled off, one of those things would stop the average person. You're extraordinary.
When I got chickenpox two years ago and ended up in hospital for a month, unable to get out of bed, and with them pumping me full of antibiotics and antivirals and antifungals, and the doctor saying to my family, we're not sure if she's going to survive. That stopped me for a bit. When I got out of hospital, I was so weak, my muscles were wasted so much out of a month that I couldn't even walk up the stairs. So I had to put off taking up archery by 6 months. So that was a bit of a shame, but I'm still, regardless, now the national indoor and outdoor blind archery champion and record holder. And in fact, it's our archery club's Christmas breakup this Saturday, and I'm refusing to go because I will get handed about 30 record-breaking certificate. So every time I break my own record by about 1 point, I get a new record certificate. I don't know what to do with. I've already got about 30 record-breaking certificates. I don't know what to do with these certificates. I've got, tons of medals hanging on my wall. There's not that many blind archers, and I'm the only blind archer in Queensland. So, like I said, I keep on getting, and I'm just refusing to go because it's embarrassing being handed all these medals and certificates. So I'm actually avoiding going. Isn't that funny?
Can you talk a little bit about learning life again after blindness? I mean, did the blindness sort of occur over a period of time? Was it fairly sudden? Can you talk us through that period of your life?
So in Australia, I worked for the Australian Opera, sang with young outfit for 2 years. Then I moved over to Germany, was singing with the Frankfurt Opera, and towards the end of that, I just actually quit my job, resigned, because I was coming back to Australia to hopefully take up a position in Phantom of the Opera in Sydney, and had sent all my everything I owned back to Australia. And then suddenly my eyesight started to deteriorate. I'd already been having laser treatment, which always says kind of like someone playing Space Invaders with your eyes. So it was unbelievably painful. I apparently have the record for getting the most amount of laser shots in one session, and the doctor ended up having to stop. He said, I can't do it anymore. He said, how come you're not complaining about pain? Isn't it painful? I said, it's excruciating, but at least if I get it done in one session rather than 4, which will be normal, it's only 1 time excruciating pain, not 4 times excruciating pain. So just put up with it, and, I take painkillers before I got there, painkillers when I get back, So over a 6 months period, I went from still driving my car around Europe to completely blind, not even light perception. So I'm what they call a NLP, no light perception blind, because there's only 5% of us who are that blind out of the people who are legally blind. There's only 5% of us who do the full Monty, so to speak. And so, in the Herx eye clinic where I was getting all my eye operations over in Germany, they called me the most extreme case they'd ever had. But, why do anything by halves? If you can go the full way, why not do it? Not exactly my intention, but I got diabetes from an autoimmune disorder. So that's affected lots of other things. I have lots of other allergies as well because my body just keeps on attacking itself. So obviously every time they operated on my eyes to save my sight, my body attacked what they did. So within 10 days of an eye operation, my body had messed up what they'd done, and then they have to discuss it and send me in for more surgery. So I went through 6 months living in a hospital in Germany, having eye operation after eye operation. And some of my friends are saying, why do you keep on going back for it? Each time you say, I'm never going to do this again because I come in so much pain. And I said, because I can't ever look back in my life and say, if I only got that next operation, maybe I would have sight now. So, while you discussed with the doctors, and at the end they said, you're blind, there's nothing you can do. Of course, until bionic eyes come in. And, when I went blind, they said, within 5 years I'll have, an artificial retina. Within 10 years I'll have a bionic eye. And now 20 years later they're saying within 5 years we'll have a chip at the back of the eye for the retina, and we'll have in 10 years we'll have bionic eye. So, the lines keep on blurring and going out. And so when I first got back to Australia, because my mum came and rescued me because I was so sick and weak from so many operations by then, Mum came and rescued me in Germany and brought me back home, and I had to move my parents' place, which is very difficult when you've been living on your own for a long time overseas. So I bought a house as soon as I could together with my brother. The first 2 years my mum said I was awful because I was really frustrated and angry because, being able to jump in your car whenever you wanted to, rely on someone to go and pick up some groceries so you could cook dinner. I didn't have any work at the time, so going from a 6-day-a-week job to having nothing to do, trying to get gigs where no one wanted to employ me because I'm blind. Of course, when you're blind, you can't sing either. So I convinced Oper Queensland to give me a few jobs, so sing with them, but finding other work was incredibly difficult. My brother was really good during that period because he could just see what I was going through, and he wasn't kind of, mothering me or, doing the, I'll do it for you, Janelle. He was letting me have a go myself until I was really frustrated. But I was very suicidal at the time. I was a lot of black thoughts, and if I don't get my sight back within 6 months, I'm going to kill myself, which, of course, that timeline kept on going out. And, at a certain time, you just start to live with it and deal with it. And, of course, as soon as I was becoming active again, being asked to be on committees and feeling that I was doing something again, and then I started my own business, which meant suddenly I had lots of work, chasing up jobs, trying to get other professional artists with disability work, because at the time, and I still might be, the only agent in the Southern Hemisphere who, specialises in professional artists with disability. Everyone else thinks someone with disability is too hard to work with. And they don't look at, actually, it might just be a case of, can someone meet this person at the taxi and bring them upstairs? Can someone walk this person to the bathroom when they need to go for a bathroom break? It can be as small as that. Or, I know one of my autistic performers, all I need to do is spend the time talking him through. He was going to catch a bus to the gig. I just had to talk him through catching the bus from his place to the city, where to walk to catch the next bus to get him to the university campus, where to go there. That was all it took for him to be able to do the gig, where someone else would look at that as, that's all too much hard work. And, of course, it just takes a bit of time and patience and thinking, what's it like for this person? When I go to India, this is the 6th time I've been to this Disability Arts Festival in India. I'm always looking, I take a group of disabled artists from Australia. I always try and take 3 blind musicians, because it's mostly a music conference and festival. And so I have a lot of blind musicians, but then I always look at someone with different disability who can be our sighted help. This year that didn't happen. So we end up as a room of 5 blind people, which meant the volunteers had to give us a lot of extra help, and there were a lot of funny things happening in our room. At least we can all jump out of the tiny weeny insufficient shower and get dressed in front of the rest of the group, males and females naked, and no one really cared about that, of course. And so, and one guy had just enough sight to be able to tell, I think we're all sleeping with the light on, so can someone find where the light switch is? No one ever asked the volunteers to tell us how to work the remote control for the air conditioning, so it was a bit stuffy in the room at night, but, it's just all part of the fun. But so I know one of the things in India, there's people coming from all around the world to this festival, mostly from the Indian subcontinent. So they're saying it's all accessible, but, a really steep ramp up to get in and out of the hostel would be considered completely inaccessible in Australia, because they're used to being pushed or pulled up, or down a ramp. So for them, it's not inaccessible. And when there's lots of people who can't even afford a wheelchair, so they're walking around with songs in their hands, it's not inaccessible. So while I've got this fantastic DVD called Accessible India, we look at it and laugh and say, by our standards, it's completely inaccessible. So when I'm taking a group, I would never take someone in a wheelchair, just because I'm thinking they're not going to cope, because it's just, as far as I'm concerned, inaccessible. And they would consider it inaccessible too, unless it's someone, like I always say, the group I'm taking has to have the whatever attitude. Whatever's going to happen. If we get a rehearsal or sound check before we perform, whatever. If we get up on stage and they don't give us the mics, they don't turn on the mics die while we're performing. They swap mics on us while we're performing. Whatever. They give us whatever to eat, whatever. Dinner isn't at 7 o'clock like it's supposed to be. It's at 11 o'clock because they were running late, whatever.
Who came up with the whatever attitude? I love that.
That's me. I just always say you have to have the whatever attitude. It just has to be whatever. Just accept anything and just go whatever. So whenever someone starts to complain, I just say whatever. You just have to say whatever. So, there's always something someone was not so happy about, but it's just like whatever.
I'm hearing you. It's not only that attitude. You haven't lost your sense of humour. I mean, it's the first time that we're talking, but it sounds like your sense of humour is 100% intact.
Yeah, that's why I've got a one woman cabaret called Blind Date, and I'm joking about going on a date, when you're blind and all the funny things that can happen. And there are a lot of funny things that can happen on a blind date, as we say. Yeah, of course, there's just so many things. Like, yes, in my novel, there's so much comedy, and I'm the convener of Sisters in Crime in Queensland, and so all my sisters know whenever we're doing an exercise, they know they can always tell which one's mine, because there's always comedy and humour in it. Because I think that's what's life about. How do you cope with life if you're not being positive and laughing about it? You have to laugh about some of these things. I mean, some of these things. I mean, the showers they put us in a really cheap hostel because we were their guests, so they paid for everything while we're in Sri Lanka. So 4 of us, everything was paid for, and they put us in the cheapest of cheap hostels, which was filthy. And 4 of us in a room, that's all cool. The bathroom was this big share. I don't know whether it was a sports kind of, but basically there was only cold water, and the cold water shower was on top of the urinal. So I basically had a cold shower over a urinal for the last week and a half. How can you not laugh about something like that? We've got photos. I'm going to upload them to Facebook because I said we have to get a photo. No one would believe that we're really showering over a urinal for a week. So how else can you do but the whatever attitude? And, I know a lot of people who would not have coped with that, but everyone in my group just thought it was funny. They all had the whatever attitude, whatever. It's not every day you shower over a urinal.
And that's what's so inspirational, the whatever, the resilience, the attitude of whatever it is, what it is, I'm going to sit with that and in actual fact, make light of it, make some humor out of it, laugh at it. It's, it is what it is rather than complaining. It's that's what it is. It's incredible sort of way to look at these things.
Yeah, well, the festival in India, because I'm not really a big person who's rushing around to all the disability arts festivals around Australia and overseas, because at least in the Western world, what I see is everyone goes to the disability arts festival to whinge about, how they're being discriminated and, how the reason I'm not getting the work is because I've got a disability. The reason I'm not getting my, artworks hung in a gallery is because I have a disability. And I always say, so just focus on what you can do. There's no reason an artist with a disability, in a wheelchair, let's say, can't have their artworks hung in a gallery. Like, if you're a good artist, you don't actually physically have to hang them. So therefore, what is the barrier? And just like with singing, okay, there are a lot of barriers to me getting up on stage and now being in an opera. And opera companies do put those in my way. But just earlier this year, I went back and sang with Oper Queensland in their big concert performance of the Verdi Requiem, which was amazing. And you just go on with I'll just make it work. And so that's basically what I try to do. I need to make it work, but I'm also the one who needs to fight to get the work. I'm the one who needs to get there and say, I can do this. Look at my I've got one disability, being blind. I've got hundreds, thousands maybe of abilities. So that's what I focus on, all the things I can do. So why focus on the one thing? And I don't like other people. I don't like being labelled disabled, because everyone has a disability. Like, can you sing? Are you a professional opera singer? You know what I mean? Do you have a voice that can sing opera? Therefore, you're disabled in that respect if you can't sing, for instance. So, I'm an archery champion. So if you're not great at archery, then you're disabled in that respect. So, focus on the abilities, not the disabilities. And most of the, disability arts festival, they just whinge and complain about all the discrimination and how they can't. And the one over in India, because they're having people with these serious disabilities, things that we would have corrected at birth. Like I said, they don't have wheelchairs, so some of them are walking around with thongs in their hands, dragging their legs behind them. Like, how awful is that when their streets are not clean? It's just things that we would never see over here. And yet every single person up on stage is so excited, so happy, they are celebrating, coming together for this big festival where, they give us great food, where some of these children, this is the biggest meals they get for the whole year because their family's giving them the least amount of food because they're a disabled member. So they're celebrating life, they're celebrating being there, celebrating getting up on stage and performing for this group of really supportive people. And that's what I love about this festival. It's a terribly badly organised festival. There are all these things that I just say, oh, please let me produce this concert because I could do it so much better. But you have to take the whatever attitude. It's just really a lot of things that are just so weird and funny and wrong about it.
Sounds like your focus is one that goes out and looks at not the things that you can't do, but rather the things that you can do. And part of the challenge is that people sometimes come to you and whether it be tell you or insinuate or kind of say there are barriers and it's not going to work for you, and you're kind of having to say, let me speak for myself. I'll make it work for me if you give me the opportunity. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. You're having to kind of advocate and focus on that rather than having to battle both those things.
Definitely, and obviously being a good self-advocate and being able to, like in the health world, I'm very health literate, so I can get up and speak for myself because I'm confident, because I've been on stage all my life. I'm confident to get up at, like tomorrow I'm on a panel discussion about disability and work people can get. Because I can get up and advocate for myself, because I'm prepared to sit on these committees with all doctors and healthcare professionals, or go to an international health forum and talk in front of all healthcare workers and scientists and that, and tell them my experience and what it's really like to, have the issue, have the disability, whatever it is. Because I'm happy to start up petitions or to just fight people and, arguing. So I will apply for jobs where I know they're going to look and say, she's blind, she can't do it. But, of course, if they actually give me the chance to say, well, of course I can do it, you just don't know how I can do it. People assume that because you're blind, you can read Braille, which going blind when I was 29 and having no feeling in my fingers because of, diabetes, nerve damage to my fingers, means I don't read Braille. So I have to listen to everything. I've got a talking computer, which is a huge help, of course. Means I can access most things on the internet. Like there's a lot of inaccessible things on the internet, a lot of inaccessible documents I get sent, but then I'm prepared to go back to these. There's every so often I get sent a newsletter, they've chosen a new format. I'll get back to them and say, you've just made an inaccessible format. Do you want to look at changing things? So, I choose my battles, because if every time I went to a website and found it inaccessible, like there's lots of shopping websites that you just look at and you go, I can't do that. Like you have made something inaccessible. So when I'm applying for a festival, to apply to some international festival, and I've left it till the last minute, so the 12 minutes before midnight, and you get to the last page of submit and there is something I have to tick, I'm not a robot, and there is absolutely no way I can tick it, that's when you get really frustrated. And it's just like, oh my God, there was one time, it was during really soon, I think half an hour before I got to the point. And it wasn't one that some online forms you're filling out. So then basically I can just log out, call my mum, wake her up at 11:30, say, Mum, you have to finish this for me. And she can just log in. All the information's there. She just has to go to the last 2 pages to click yes, I accept, and then submit. And this one was basically, I've just emailed her all the information, say, Mum, you've got half an hour. It's due in a half an hour. You have to copy and paste all these things in, and then you get to this one. So it's a real panic. So that's when it's really frustrating. Like I said, there's a lot of shopping sites that are incredibly frustrating because they are inaccessible. That's probably the most frustrating thing, is when you're seeing things that they could do right, but they just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of government things, even though it's everything, like, for instance, the hospital, they are supposed to have everything. Government is supposed to have everything accessible. In the public hospital, they are still refusing to send out an email about your reminder for your upcoming appointment. Or let's say you're going for one of those horrible things like a bowel preparation, and they send you this 2 weeks list of what you can eat and what you can't eat, what you need to do at certain stages, what you need to eat and drink at the last stages. They give it to me in print form. So I can't read it, which means someone reads it to me once 2 weeks before, and I have to memorize everything on that darn list, which, of course, you can't. You don't do everything right because you can't remember. And they've got a policy that they don't send anything by email, and you're going, that's crazy, because that's making it inaccessible to me. to anyone who's not literate. So, 18% of our population cannot read print. 18%. That's the populations of South Australia and Western Australia. So that's many
Incredible.
people who cannot read print, and yet they're refusing to send something inaccessible. Like anyone who's, different language speaker, if it's sent out by email, all they need to do is push their translate button and they can understand it. When it's in print, what are they supposed to do? If they have a scanner, they can scan it in and then try and push the translate button. That's one of my big things I've been.
How important has family and technology been for you?
Both, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I moved back to Brisbane, because it wasn't my plan to move back to Brisbane. It was my plan to continue my career in Sydney. But obviously having family, like my mum comes over once a week to help me out, just with paperwork things. I mean, now I've got the NDIS, so that's helped a huge amount because my mum's, 80 and her eyesight's failing herself. And she likes the chance to come over, and she makes up medicine for my parrot who has separation anxiety issues. So she has to make up a bird Prozac each week for my So, yeah, of course I would have a bird who's got separation anxiety who needs Prozac every day. So she'll come over and just help me out with, just getting all my appointment letters in order. So if I'm going to meetings, she gets up my cap charges ready. She just puts it in a pile in order of the week going past. She goes through my filing cabinet. She reads me any mail. Like I said, she makes up the week's worth of my parrot's Prozac, just so I can just give it to him each day to eat. Other than that, I have to stick a syringe in his beak, which is very challenging when you're blind. So I relied a lot of, and like I said, when I first got back to Australia, my brother and I bought a house together because he had the job and I had the deposit, and they wouldn't give me, a housing loan because when they were looking at blind, well, of course, I can't work. That's the assumption. And my brother had no deposit because he spent his money, but he had a good job. So together we bought a house. So, in that respect, now I have a house, which is really nice. Technology, I would be completely lost. I would not have all that I have now because obviously I can write a book because I use my talking computer. I can access the internet. I, have a really excellent thesaurus that I can look up words on. All these things I used to just pull out of a book. And there's audio books that I can, download on the computer. So because I was a big reader before I went blind, now I'm a big audiobook reader. I just listen to them sped up about 10 times normal reading rate because otherwise I get bored listening to a person reading at the normal speaking rate. So apparently blind people can listen to speech so fast that there's no human can possibly speak it that fast. And it is so fast that unless you're blind, you can't really understand it. But, when you're used to listening to synthetic speech spoken really fast, you can understand it perfectly. So,
has your listening improved? My understanding is that sometimes, if someone loses a particular, sense, that potentially the brain goes out and says we're going to give additional efforts to other senses, and or maybe out of necessity we have to go out and practice listening harder. If we don't have vision, has your hearing improved? What do you?
Well, like I always say, it's not so much that my hearing has improved. I'm just using it better. I was a musician anyway, so I was already really good at listening to things, hearing things. Because I'm a big researcher, I just like to know everything about, I get diagnosed with a new health issue. I have to read everything I can about it. And I read all the scientific papers so I can read all the scientific speak. So I know I researched a lot into it. So apparently your brain is taken up with 80% of your senses is taken up with sight. And because, if you just glance around the room, you pick up an enormous amount of detail in that tiny little glance because you can see the colour of the walls, what the painting on the wall is, where the dust is, how many books in the bookshelf, the color. You pick up so much information in that tiny glance. Of course, if you have to feel over all that information, A, you're not getting all that information, but B, it's going to take you hours to feel all that information that you can do in a millisecond. So they say when you lose your sight, that 80% of the brain doesn't just kind of end up as wasteland. Basically, you take that up with touch, which obviously mine's not too good. My touch isn't very good. So, but with, sound and smell. So suddenly all that 80% is being used. So like I said, just using your hearing and your smell better. It's just always so funny when I'm in hospital, and I know when we're over in, this group of, 5 blind people sharing a room, you couldn't whisper something to someone in the room because the person you were talking about would hear you. And it's just like when I'm at the hospital. So when I'm at the hospital, they'll stand just outside my door discussing me. And it's so funny because someone will say along the way, she can hear every word we're saying, because like they've realised that my hearing is so good that they can stand whispering at my door, but I can hear, come into my damn room and discuss me if you're going to discuss me, because I can hear every word you're saying. So it's just so funny because, people used to try and trick me by walking up the back stairs to creep in. And my brother just say, and my flatmate at the time say, doesn't matter what you say, she knows exactly who's walking up the stairs by, the sound of the way they're walking. And, you cannot sneak up on Janelle. But they also commented that I walk incredibly quietly. I've got timber floors. And obviously, because I'm listening to everything, because you can actually hear the walls around you. There's something called human echolocation. So it's like the bats, except humans learn to use it when you're blind because you don't bother using it when you can see. Although apparently if you put on a blindfold for a couple of weeks, you'd start to use it. So you can hear things around you. So if someone, let's say, the waiter is reaching a hand in front of my face, I can hear there's something in the way. So I can hear that sound of the dense space. One of the guys I've just been travelling with, he has the most amazing human echolocation. So he never uses a cane. He just runs around. Once he's been walked through an area once, he can navigate anywhere. So when we were over in Singapore last year, like he was walking myself and this other blind lady down, three different hallways to the lift, down the lift, get into the big, it was one of those really high atrium reception areas, walk straight across this big open space, stop just before we got to the stairs to walk up a couple of stairs and then down a couple of stairs into the restaurant, because his human echolocation is so amazing.
Does he have to make sounds along the way, or he can just pick up from other sounds how it echoes as well? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I don't do the clicking. So they actually tell about the sound click. So, and I said to him once, because I've never heard him doing it, I hear some other people doing it. I've heard him clicking a few times just when, like, the room was saying Sri Lanka had fans on the whole time because of the bad air and because of mosquitoes. So his echolocation wasn't working too well because it was really getting affected by the fans. But I asked him once, I said, do you actually do the clicking? And he said yes, but he must do it so quietly that it's like even I can't hear it. Like I said, I've just heard him click a few times just when, he was really struggling with the fan sound. But, yeah, so, yeah, most blind people have the good, especially people born blind, have really good human echolocation. But, like I said, I walk around my own house. It's only when my radar's off because, like, maybe I'm really tired or had a few drinks and then suddenly I'm bumping into things. But normally I just wander around. I actually had a flatmate move into my house one time and he was here for 3 weeks before he noticed I was blind. So that's because I just walk around. I'm doing all the cooking because I do all the cooking at home. So he didn't even notice because I'm navigating the house so well.
I used to have a friend who unfortunately is now passed away, but he was blind, and every time we would speak, he would immediately rattle off, my date of birth, my address, my phone number. His memory was incredibly sharp, and he was, quite an elderly man. Chenko Stoichev, amazing and beautiful human being who was just a giver. But I tell you what, geez, was he sharp, and he didn't have any vision either, in terms of completely, I think he said light perception. But I tell you what he made up with everything else was you remind me very much of him.
Well, I know one of the guys, so Dr. Jeffrey Usher, he's just got his doctorate in music. and he's a jazz pianist too. He lives in Brisbane as well, and he was one of the guys who are over there. He remembers numbers. So basically, when we need to, we've got a couple of SIM cards in Sri Lanka, and he just remembered the numbers. Or you say to him, "Oh, what's the currency conversion between, we've got 4,000 Sri Lankan rupees, what's that in Australian dollars at the moment? It's 1.25 at the moment." He just rattled it off. But the other guy we were there with, he's from Iran, and he's a doctor of Persian literature. You can ask him to recite any poetry from the entire tens of thousands of years of Persian poetry, and he'll just rattle it off. He's also got his bachelor in Arabic literature, so he also teaches that at the University of Tehran. And you're just going, and of course, like Persian music is all by listening and remembering orally. So, of course, he's a pianist and composer and arranger. So just watching these people are just amazing, amazing memories. Like, I think compared to most of my friends and family, my memory is amazing. Compared to those guys, I'm an amateur, so you just go, wow. I mean, remembering tens of thousands of years of Persian poetry, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. In some sense, and maybe it does come from that place of 80% is of our resources moves towards that visual perception, and once you lose that, it almost brings about the possibility of becoming, and I don't know if this is the correct word, but superhuman. That you can perform in these other areas in a phenomenal outlier sort of way that your hearing and that of your colleagues or memory, and then add on top of that your incredible attitude, the can-do attitude and the whatever attitude. Wow, look out.
Well, and I do sometimes say to people, I'm just trying to be superwoman. Like I said, you have to focus on the abilities, and I like it. Like, I look at other blind people. So I've actually got a international multidisciplinary trio. So it's my blind pianist from Iran, plus a blind dancer from Nepal. She does Nepalese dance. She teaches blind people how to dance. She's an amazing dancer. And we've got this trio called Mirage, and we just basically apply for, international festivals, because obviously, we're always having to fly somewhere to meet up when, one person living in Nepal, one person living in Iran, and another in Australia. And so, like, every one of them is just amazing. Like, I know so many amazing people with disabilities who are doing amazing things. So the blind pianist from Iran, he's also does swimming, every day. The blind jazz pianist from Brisbane, he's really into blind cricket, and then I've got, like I said, the blind Nepalese dancer who is energetically throwing herself around the stage. She just learns where the front of the stage is and then just goes and dances, which, I find amazing, because I'm not so keen on throwing myself around the stage, because I'm sure I'll fall off, and I have a bit of an issue about falling off stages. But so you do see these amazing things, and it's just because that's what you need to do. And I know I've met a lot of people who just give up and say, all too hard, I can't do anything anymore. But, that's not what I'm about. That's not what the people I spend time with and like to make music with are about. They're about the let's go out and enjoy life and travel a lot. People always joke when we say we're going sightseeing. Yes, we're going sightseeing in Sri Lanka, and people go, yeah, right, how do blind people sightsee? Okay, we have someone who needs to describe the scene to us, because you're still getting the sounds and the smells. And we're on a train trip, so one of the guys was crazy about train travel. So, of course, you're getting all the stinky diesels going past us, but, listening to the stops and people coming down selling food on the train. And
I remember my friend, we went to a lookout, and he says, Nesh, tell me what you can see. And I remember I was a young man, and I scratched my head going, what's Chenko asking me this for? It wasn't making sense. I'd say, there's mountains, there's nice greenery, in between us and the mountains, there's the city, and, you can see, Parliament House, and I couldn't kind of get it. And you're filling in all the gaps for me, looking at your bio, what we talked about before in terms of people putting in, boundaries, they're the boundaries that I was putting in as well, to thinking to myself, how can Janelle do this? Archery, opera, music productions, singing, traveling, writing conference papers, giving papers, being a writer, sitting on health committees, and the list goes on. And I think I get it. You just do it. This is not a disability. Why would that go out and exempt you from all those things? You get up and you do what you need to do, and you go and get it done. And there's 1,000 reasons why someone can't. One of those could be because you don't have your sight, but it could also be because you're feeling tired, or you've got a "I can't" attitude.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people with an I can't. You don't need to have a disability or any health issue to have the I can't, attitude. I mean, I meet people all the time, and I find people with the I can't, very difficult to deal with.
How do you take that?
I get a bit frustrated because I'm just going, you have so much you can. Why don't you vote? And I'll regularly be telling, I've got a few negative people in my life, and I'm always saying, just be positive. Just say something, positive, and do the, I read it in a book sometime, and it said, when you get up or when you're having a bad time, just say 5 positive things. And I said that to someone one time when he was being incredibly negative. I said, just say 5 positive. Oh, what's positive? I said, you were able to get out of bed this morning. You're able to walk into the shower and have your shower on your own this morning. You're able to sit down and make your own breakfast and eat your own breakfast this morning. You're able to see the beautiful blue sky when you walked outside. That's all it takes. If you can't find anything positive, of course, those are positive things when you think there's people that cannot get themselves out of bed, cannot have a shower on their own, cannot make their own breakfast or sit down, or might not be able to afford breakfast, cannot walk outside and see the beautiful blue sky. So, especially when you're in a polluted country and you only see a brown sky. But, obviously, if you live in New Delhi and you only see brown skies, how do you know there's such a thing as a beautiful blue sky like we get in Australia? Even that.
It's about gratefulness, being grateful and appreciative, and touching that, understanding that, knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's always, it's using what you do have and being positive for what you do have. And it's sometimes I say I can't do that, but that's mostly because I'm either feeling too sick to do something, like as in, someone will say, okay, let's climb up to the, no, actually, no, when they said that, I did it. I was just thinking, climb up to the top of a Buddhist temple in Sri Lanka, and there was just a million stairs. And even though I wasn't that well at the time, I just said, I'm going to do it. And I just kept on having to take breaks. And I know there's a big joke from there because there's all these monkeys running around everywhere and sitting on the rails. And I put my hand in something and I've gone, oh my goodness, I just put my hand in monkey poo. And they said, no, the priest, the monks put yogurt there, some sort of, prayer ritual. They put yogurt on it. Oh, great. So, the rest of the time I've got my hand in monkey poo, because there was just yogurt all over the rails to help you to walk up the stairs. But, you just have to laugh about something like that. I'm sure some people are going to meltdown, you just have to laugh.
What would your message be to people who are going through a hard time? I know that obviously the first couple of years of trying to adjust, you were going through, your own dark time, and you mentioned that, you'd even contemplated, the thoughts going through your head about, if this doesn't improve, if I don't get my eyesight back in 6 months, I'm going to kill myself. The real dark times. Clearly you got through, and you're a formidable force, and you've done such amazing things and continue to enjoy traveling and the other things that you did, even, when you did have sight. What would you say to people who are in that hard space at the moment?
It's so difficult because I know I was in that place. It didn't matter how many hands were reaching down to help me to get out of it. It was just I didn't want to take hold of their hand. So I know that when you're in that place, people just saying, come on, just get over it, or come on, I'll give you a hand. You just don't want to go there. You can't. So I guess it's just finding within yourself, obviously if you're prepared to take someone's hand, or, to work through things. But I think it's just finding that spark of hope within yourself and trying to find that something positive. And I think that, you know, just say 5 positive things about today. Even if, like, all you can see in your life is that it's negative, like I said, there's always positive. You know, like I said, hey, I can have my own shower. That's already a positive. You know, I can eat my own breakfast. Whatever it is, there's something positive in everyone's life. You know, hey, I've woken up this morning, because there's a lot of people who don't wake up in the morning. So, hey, I've woken up and there's a roof over my head. I'm not out on the street. You know, I'm not living in the slums of New Delhi where there's, you know, a million or so people living under a piece of cardboard, you know, in these absolutely revolting conditions that we couldn't even imagine. So, you know, there's always something positive. And that's the only thing I can think, that, you know, you just have to find that something positive and then try to find something that you actually enjoy doing. So, you know, for me, it was singing really, really helped me, because I love to sing. So that for me was a savior. If I'd lost my voice, I'm not sure I would have survived. So obviously, got all these things on my technology, being noise in the background. So it's just finding that something that's positive. That's like, you know, like I said, finding something and focusing on that. Trying to do something that, even when you're in a bad place, finding something you enjoy doing. And like, I know that sport's a really good thing for that, because it's, you know, using some of those, some of the chemicals in your body, so it's really helping you. Like, I was never ever into sports. I've never done sports, so my friends think it's hysterical that now I'm doing blind archery, and now they're calling me an elite athlete, which I think is so hysterical, because never having done any sport in my life and suddenly I'm being called an elite athlete is just so funny. And all my opera fans think it's hysterical. You know, I'm like opera singer to archer, like, it's just completely nuts. But, you know, I guess it's part of who I am now, that I just do yet another bizarre thing. I mean, who knows? I have no idea what the next crazy thing I'm going to do is, but, you know, if there's something out there that sounds interesting and that, you know, is going to make me enjoy life, then I'll do it. Someone invites me to South Africa to, you know, teach music or to sing or to whatever, teach blind archery for a year, I'd do it, you know.
There's a bit of a yes attitude there as well.
Probably a little bit, yeah. It's just like when you're flying overseas, people go, well, how can you fly? Like, you need someone to fly. No, I don't. Like, there's this fantastic service called Meet and Assist. So anyone with disability, kids underage, can fly assisted by the airline. So I can get onto an airline. I mean, obviously I don't choose flights where I'm stuck in Bangkok for 20 hours on my own, because then it's not accessible. But, like, I just got Singapore Air because it's got good connections. So I end up in the air for a couple of hours. They, you know, from check-in to when I get, you know, through at the other end where I'm going to, I'm in their care. They're all looking after me. They're making sure I'm getting into the flights. They're making sure I get to my next flight, whatever it is. So I can fly anywhere on my own, which is fantastic. It means, you know, I've traveled all over the world because I organise people when I get there. And the other thing I always do is have a backup plan in place. So when I was just over in India and Sri Lanka, backup plan was using Wi-Fi. Sri Lanka doesn't really have Wi-Fi, so backup plan is I just pay $5 a day and use roaming. So, whenever I've not had backup plan in place, something will go wrong, and then you're really stuck. And then you're just in this situation where you're just going, if I don't have a backup plan. So, when I went to London a few years ago, I was staying with a number of different places, places, and because I just recently had something happen to me in Brisbane where I didn't have backup plan in place and just everything went really, really pear-shaped. Not unmanageable pear-shaped, but just didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. So it's just like, now I always have backup plans. Everything I do has a backup plan. If I'm going to see a show at the theatre, I've got, person A organised to meet me there and go to the thing. If just in case person A can't make it, then I have to organise person B that's going to be available just in case I need them. For instance, or that I just call the theatre and say, hey, can you meet me at the front? I'll catch a taxi in. Can you meet me, put me on my seat? Always having backup plan. Yeah. It just makes me feel, more confident and, leaves less open to go wrong, basically.
Do you ever feel anxious, nervous? Do you worry much, or you kind of just feel, the whatever, it'll work out. I've put in place some backup plans, strategies. I've got an idea about how things are going to work out. Do you get concerned, or you just go for it?
Yeah, no, I do sometimes, but just certain issues that concern you or make you anxious, and that's when I go through nights without sleeping. But luckily, I just listen to audiobooks so I can take my mind off. Yeah, I do, but it's not necessarily big picture things. It's just, it can be something really silly, especially when I was getting ready to go over to India. I had so many things I had to do. I'd promised 3 or 4 people that I'd help them write a conference paper or abstract. They were applying for, some big international conference. I do a lot of editing of people's stuff, editing biographies, helping people, second language English speakers write conference abstracts, whatever. And they're asking me to help them. And then I've got a couple of grant applications I want to put in. And then I've got, 5 committee meetings, which I also have to read reports for and comment on. And then I also have to let everyone know that I'm going away, and also have to, et cetera, et cetera. And then I start to get stressed about the fact that I've got so much to do, that how can I do it in time? But obviously getting so stressed that you can't do anything, which a lot of people do, they get too much on the plate. So it's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? And one bite at a time. I just try to do the one bite at a time rather than look at elephant. I can't eat that elephant all at once. So therefore I'm going to be paralyzed by...
You just chew very fast.
Yeah, yeah. It just means I chew all night and don't get any sleep. So before I flew off to India, I managed to say, okay, there's a few things I still need to do. I'll just have to survive without them. And I lay in bed for 45 minutes because I just thought, it'd be good to get my feet up for 45 minutes before I jump into a plane for the next 17 hours. And, so 45 minutes is pretty much normal for me just before I catch a flight overseas, because I'll be just racing to do everything till the last minute. And, because 2 nights before it, I was going to do things all night, and suddenly, an old singing teacher of mine had died. So then, of course, instead of doing work all, Sunday night, instead I'm going to a funeral rehearsal on Monday night, because I put my hand up to not just go to the funeral, to sing in the choir, of course, which means suddenly I'm having to look at music to sing at the funeral, going to rehearsal on Sunday night. Then instead of Monday morning, packing all morning, instead I'm at a funeral all morning, so still, okay, that took a huge chunk out of my time. Great. Okay. Now how do I get it all done in the time? So, yeah, it's just,
You're such an inspiration with such a full life. I think so many of our listeners will take so much from not only this conversation, but what's possible, and to take these barriers, limitations, and put them aside, because they are just figments of our imagination. You're a clear example, and a phenomenal one of that. How can people get in contact should they wish to collaborate, put some ideas forward, meet you, ask you something that you'll say yes to?
Again.
How can people best find out more?
I'm very good at saying yes to things, I was just like, yeah, of course I'll do an interview the day after I've got a flight from, Sri Lanka, when my voice is all croaky because I've been giving so many music therapy and performance and breathing so much polluted air. Of course I said yes to talk on a panel tomorrow morning. Just like, okay, should I fit in some archery training there too? I probably will contact my archery assistant and say, yeah, let's go tomorrow afternoon. Anyway, so I've got my website, which is very out of date because I need to find a new web designer to help me just update things. I need to find the time to rewrite the biographies too, but that's another thing. So my website is www.salubrisproductions.com. So salubris is in the word healthfulness, because I thought it suited, well, it was just a joke word to start with, and then it became my business. So salubris is in SALUBRIOUS, productions, all one word.com. Salubris is healthfulness, and I think we all need a bit of healthfulness in our lives, right?
Absolutely. And I think healthy mind frame as well, which I think is very much evidence of how you live your life. I'll tell you what, I'm I'm not going to whinge a single thing again and place limitations. I mean, really, this has been eye-opening because, my thoughts going into today's conversation, is how does this lady do all these things? And I didn't realize that that's just actually, in actual fact, my own bias, that I'm doing the same things as other people are doing to you. And that's really, insightful about, these biases that I bring forward about, what a disability is. And in actual fact, I think this is more about abilities and attitude and focus and humor and taking hold of life. And I'll say it again, you're an absolute inspiration, and I thank you so much for coming onto the show, and I look forward to finding out more about what's next as well for you in this jam-packed journey.
Well, on Facebook, I've got a Facebook, just my own name in Facebook, but there's apparently a lot of fun pictures of me in, New Delhi and mostly in Sri Lanka. And, I've got YouTube as well under Salupris Productions, some, links to music I've done, and I'm also on LinkedIn. But I haven't worked out how to put most of the stuff up there because it's not that accessible. So it just means I'm kind of there. But yeah, like I know when we're in the room both in India and in Sri Lanka, that's what everyone's attitudes was. They couldn't believe all these blind people could get around. So, people want to mother us because they think that's what we need. And all we're saying is we just need to, if we've dropped something on the floor, yes, someone to find it much quicker than us kind of feeling around on a disgusting floor is much easier. Hey, which T-shirt I'm about to put on today, is much better than like I was about to wear my pajama T-shirt home, yesterday. And I was just like, I was so glad when the one side lady, she said, Janelle, by the way, you've got your pajama shirt. No, I'm not wearing my pajama shirt. So obviously that sort of thing is, but, I don't need someone to, we don't need someone to walk us to the bathroom. The first day we find the bathroom, we know how to find it after that. We know how to get down to the food, after the first day someone shows us that, and that's what I think most people don't realise is that, you don't need to mother people. You don't need to give them as much. I mean, obviously there are people who need more because, I can't say that I'm,
sure.
I'm the same as everyone else. There are people who need a lot more help because they're just not as capable. But certainly the people I've travelled with, who are blind, they need very little support because they're quite capable on their own. And, obviously none of the people I'm travelling with would travel if they weren't very capable. So, that's obviously the people I like to surround myself with, the people who are positive and capable and risk takers and want to get out there and do it.
Janelle, thank you very, very much for your time and for sharing your inspirational and beautiful, story and life. I really appreciate it.
No, it's okay. I hope you enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please support it by going to iTunes and putting a review, subscribe, share it via social media, and tell others about it. Start a conversation. It's listeners like you that make this able and possible, and why we bring in these guests to go out and share their knowledge and resources. And just lastly, if you are a psychologist and you want to go out and be part of a bigger team, develop your experience and get into some exciting work, come to strategicpsychology.com.au/careers and reach out. I'd love to hear from you.